My name is Jason Watterson, and I've been doing this for quite a while. I've been working for the trust for working on about 18 years. And over those 18 years, trailers have been the cause of more than just a few injuries, more than just a few car accidents, and unfortunately, the cause or contributing factor into some real catastrophes that have happened over the years. So our subject today is trailer safety. And I think it's an important one for really all of us because it's one time or another, most of us will probably end up towing a trailer from one place to another. For some of you out there, you're old pros, you do this day in, day out. Every day you're moving a trailer from one place to another. Um, but I think no matter what your experience or no matter how much you use a trailer, there's something that you can take from this presentation today that will help you to prevent some of these accidents that we see surrounding this equipment. And these things are essential, right? Trailers, we use them for tons of jobs out there. We use them to get our equipment where it needs to be. Sometimes it's just stuff. Some of you may have been using trailers all weekend long to haul your toys somewhere, your camper, or maybe you're doing some work over the weekend, like me. That's why my eyes are a little bit droopy this weekend. There wasn't a whole lot of recreation over the weekend. It was a lot of work. Well, let's talk about a couple of things on trailer safety to start with. This is not a DOT training. We're not going to talk about air brakes and all of those things. However, if you are a CDL operator, there's still stuff that's going to be beneficial in here for you. But we're not going to get into some of the minutia of the Department of Transportation requirements for this stuff. Just a reminder on trailers, it is all about the numbers. We will be talking about a number of different ratings, weights, classes, all of those things. The numbers are important here. We have to ensure that we have a trailer and everything that goes around it that is and vehicle as well that is rated for the type of loads that we're intending on carrying. That's an essential thing, and so you got to know where to find those numbers, and we'll talk about that as we go through the training. There are a lot of different types of trailers. Just a regular little utility trailer that we can haul around an ATV, or an enclosed trailer, flatbeds, goosenecks, you name it. There's a variety, and there's a trailer for something like that. One thing that is sure on all of these is that trailers are different to operate, to tow, than just driving a regular car or truck around. And everything is exaggerated in a trailer. So small moves that we make big moves back at the end of the trailer. We may have to make wide turns to be able to get around that corner without cutting it off and causing some damage there. It's harder to start, it's harder to stop a trailer. So just remember, trailers are different than just driving a vehicle, and we have to treat them with that respect and be smart about utilizing those trailers. Well, let's talk about the different parts and pieces in this system. Let's start out with the vehicle that you're intending to tow with. Is your vehicle up to the task? Now, maybe this motorcycle is up to the task of hauling a canoe on a trailer, but it seems a little sketchy to me. What is your vehicle rated for? How do I determine that? What can my car or truck tow? Well, there are a couple of ways to find that out. One is to go to your owner's manual and make sure it's appropriate for the vehicle that you're driving, and there'll be some good information in there that will tell you what these ratings are. In absence of that, or better yet, in combination with that, you can go to the door frame of the driver door of your trailer, and there will be a data plate in there that will tell you what the rating of the vehicle is. It's important to not overload the vehicle, right? We have to ensure, like this bottom picture here, we don't want to put too much load onto our vehicle, because then it can be unsafe. We can get out of control, and people and property can get hurt. Let's talk about some of the other parts. The hitch itself. This hitch is critical. That's the key component in a trailer vehicle operation or combination, is because this is where we hook those together. This is the pivot point. When we look at this whole system, we have to remember that the weakest link is the weakest point, and we need to look and see where that link is, ensure that each of those links is adequate for the task that we're trying to put towards the vehicle. All right. A couple other important things are the safety chains. This is a fail-safe. If things go wrong, if the trailer becomes decoupled for whatever reason, this is our safety, so our trailer doesn't just head off wherever it wants to go and potentially kill people. So we want to ensure that we have adequate safety chains. So safety chains for a little light trailer are going to be lighter chains. Adequates for a heavy trailer are going to be a lot heavier capacity, and we've got to ensure that they're appropriate for that type of load. Take a look and inspect your chains. Make sure that they're in good condition. They haven't been dragging down the road. I've seen a lot of safety chains over my years that have been worn almost in two due to people not adjusting the chains appropriately. Crisscross those chains. What's the purpose of crossing those over? Well, then if the hitch becomes decoupled, it will fall down and kind of cradle it so it doesn't hit the road. Because if it hits the road, that can be really bad. Things start bouncing around, things get damaged. Oh, by the way, will there be damage if the safety chains are involved? Yep, it will. But what we're trying to do is minimize the damage and be able to control that vehicle and safely get it to a stop. Crisscross those chains so we cradle that. What happens if the chains are too long? Well, you can adjust those in various different ways. With some of those, you can go through the attachment point and hook back to the chain. In other situations, I may not have that option. And I can simply just put a twist in the chains, and that will reduce the length of the chains so they're shorter. What if the chains are too short? Well, you may have to get some new chains. Otherwise, they might bind, and they could cause damage to the chains themselves or to your vehicle or the trailer. So make sure the chains are appropriate for the task that we're dealing with. Trailers have to have lights. If the lights aren't working, don't move the trailer. And so how do I do that? Well, I've got to plug those lights in. In most cases, our trailers aren't going to have their own source of power. And even if they do, how do they get the information from the signal lights or brake lights? We got to have a connection between the vehicle and the trailer itself. And there are various different connectors, plugs that we can use, but generally there's going to be a 4-prong, a 6, or a 7 are the general ones that we use in today's world. If you have a vehicle that does not have the right plug for what your trailer is, there are adapters that you can put in place. Okay. All right. The drawbar. Sometimes we call this the hitch. This also has a capacity on it. If you look on this picture, you can see that there are things stamped or there are numbers stamped there, and it will give us the load rating for that. Make sure that this is secure, that we put the appropriate pin in there. It needs to fit snugly, and I got to have a clip in place or another pin that goes through that to prevent it from coming out. Okay. All right. The coupler. This is on the trailer. And once again, this has a rating as well. We need to match the ball to the coupler. If I have the coupler that is too large for the ball that we're using, it can decouple, and then I can have a real problem. So, so my recommendation on this is, number one, you should check every time, but to make it, to put a little fail-safe in there, let's color code our hitches, our drawbars, and our couplers so we don't hook the wrong thing up. Ensure that your lever is down. Make sure when you're hooking it up that it's all the way open so that it gets seated all the way down. And then latch it in place and put a pin in there or clip to prevent it from coming loose. Make sure this is secure and locked. It's always good to put a little lift on this once it's secured in place and ensure that we have the right ball and everything is properly coupled. If I don't have that all the way open when I set the ball down on there, it could end up being sitting on top and not properly latched in place. Okay. All right. The next thing we want to talk about is the ball itself. It will have a rated capacity as well. And so it will be stamped on there. It needs to exceed the gross vehicle weight of the trailer. That's the trailer itself and the load that we have on it. Okay. The receiver hitch. This is paired with the frame of your vehicle. Don't ever exceed the capacity of it. Once again, it will have a rating on it. There will be a tag, and generally there will be a class, 1 through 5, and that will give the trailer weight, the tongue weight. Now that's how much weight goes onto the hitch in a downward direction, not what's being towed. And then the size of the diameter of the tubing, all of those things. Okay. All right. The next thing we want to look at the gross vehicle weight rating. So I'm going to take a look and see exactly what this is rated for. The weight, excuse me, the GVWR of our vehicle should exceed or needs to exceed, of course, the weight rating for the trailer and our load. And really the difference between those is how much I can really tow. All right. So check the tag and ensure that this vehicle can tow that type of trailer or the type of load that we have. When I load the vehicle or load the trailer on, there are some rules of thumb that I need to go by. The amount of weight that is distributed to the front of the vehicle should be about 10% of the weight on the tongue. So where that couples together, there should be 10% of the weight of the load on that. Well, why don't I want to have a whole bunch of weight on it? I get better traction that way. Well, that can also impact the stability of my vehicle and how well it tracks down the road. So about 10% is the rule of thumb. Our weight needs to be forward. If I have my weight towards the back, it will have a tendency to lift the rear tires of the vehicle, and that will cause what we call fishtailing. You may have seen trailers going down the road like that. That's because they didn't have adequate weight on the tongue of the trailer. All right. Also consider distributing that weight side to side, front to back, so it's evenly distributed. If I put a whole bunch of weight on one side, it's not going to pull well down the road. All right. Let's see. Next topic that we have here. Do not overload your vehicle. Do not put too much weight on that. Here is a quick video here showing the difference between where we have our loads weighted. Let's see. All right. This is if we take the weight off of the hitch and we put it to the back, you can see how that fishtail happens. Sorry, we had a little spammer in the chat there. Apologize for that. Had to show him another place to go and watch a video. All right, improper load distribution. watch for this. Get that load at the with the right distribution, 10% on the tongue, and then feel it out. If it doesn't feel right, then we can redistribute things. Sometimes it's the wrong vehicle for the type of load. Now we want to figure that out before we're going, but if you get in that situation, stop. Let's pull over and fix it now before we get out of control. Whoops, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Let's see if I can make this work. Are you guys still able to see my screen? Am I sharing?
Yep, you look good, Jason.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's look at I didn't know if Mike, if you were still on there. So, all right, trailer sway. Um, that happens sometimes when I have too much tongue weight. So if I've got a trailer that's putting too much there, there are systems that where we can distribute that out there. That's not really what we're going to talk about in today's training, but there are also other things that we can look at. Look at how much drop we have on that hitch. We want to have our trailer as close to level as we can get it. If I get out of level, that can also impact trailer sway and how well the vehicle tracks down the road. A gooseneck hitch definitely helps on all of these. I can pull heavier loads and they tend to be much more stable that way, but that definitely doesn't work with your sedan because I can't really hook up to a gooseneck hitch with that. All right, let's talk about securing our load. Once we've got our trailer hooked up, we put our load on it, and that could be a backhoe or it could be some 2x4s or whatever the material is that we're hauling. I need to secure it in one way or another. How do I do that? Well, with some things, like I have a load of compost that I'm hauling out to the park to put in a flower bed or something like that. Well, that load securement, if it's in a dump bed trailer, I just need to put a tarp over it, keep that from blowing out. Other things, if there's things that could become loose, they need to be tied down in one way or another. And what would that be? In general, we're either going to use ratchet straps or we're going to use things like chains and binders. Now, there are folks out there who would like to use twine or rope or whatever they can find, a little bit of baling wire or tied up tie wire. And our recommendation is stick with the things that are tested and rated for the type of loads that we're dealing with. So your ratchet straps, they have a limited capacity to control a load, and that's based on the size and all of that. This will be also be marked on those straps. Realize that that rating was for when the strap was brand new right out of the package. And if it's been around for a while and it's beat up and it's a little ragged and it's been out in the sun, it's not going to be able to perform as well. And so we want to have a safety rating on there. There's going to be a standard load limit on that. There'll also be a braking strength. And generally that's going to be in the neighborhood of about 3 times the load limit will be the braking strength. We don't want to get anywhere near that. Don't exceed the load limit. So if I'm tying down a backhoe, a ratchet strap's probably not the appropriate tool for that. What would be? Well, it would be an appropriately sized chain and load binders to be able to tighten those up. What's the appropriate chain? It depends on the size and the weight of the vehicle. And so you look at the rating of your chains and the load binders. Generally, your binders are going to have a higher load rating than your chains, and match that up to the equipment that we're dealing with. How many of these do I need? Well, my recommendation on that is when you think you've got enough tie downs there, put one more. And generally, you're going to be in pretty good shape in those cases. There's some basic rules on that. If I'm tying a backhoe down, I need to have each axle. There needs to be a tie down in that area, as well as one tie down for each tool that's on that. So we take our backhoe. I've got the bucket. On one end, that needs to be secured as well as both axles, and one more for the bucket itself. And then for good measure, throw one more on there, just to ensure that it's there. Always give it a little twang and say that ain't going nowhere, and then we're good to go down the road. All right. Check the lights. Always make sure those lights are working. Test each one of those operations and ensure that they work. Tires and wheels. Verify this. We should have done this before we put anything on that, but let's take a look at the tire pressure as well as the condition. If you see cords sticking out of that tire, stop. If our tread depth if they're worn out, let's get the appropriate tire before we pull this load down the road. Can I test the tires just by kicking or whacking them? No. I need to use a gauge to ensure I've got the appropriate inflation in these tires. And you definitely want to check the tires for what appropriate inflation is and go right to that level. All right. I should always inspect a trailer before I use it. I recommend documenting it. And we have a nice little sheet that's just a basic one for a really simple trailer. But let's just talk about this. Before I pull a trailer, every time I've done all of my stuff, then I'm going to take a second and I'm going to walk around the entire truck and trailer and verify that everything is okay. The doors are all closed on an enclosed trailer and they're locked in place. Everything is tied down. My tires are good. The hitch, all of the attachment points are in place and latched in place. So I've got my safeties secured. My lights are working. All of those things. Let's do that walk around. Okay. All right. Make sure that your jack is all the way raised up out of place so it doesn't come in contact with the road surface when we hit a bump or go through a curb area. And let's see. Oops, I got a little ahead of myself. Make sure your safety chains are in place. And we covered all of that. Adjust your mirrors. When I pull a trailer, things are different. For one thing, my vehicle may sit a little bit lower because of the weight of the trailer. I may have to adjust my mirrors for that. The trailer may be wider, and so on some vehicles, you can adjust those mirrors out further. And in some cases, I'll have to adjust where my mirrors are pointing so I can see where are my tires on there. So when I'm making a turn, I ensure that I'm in the right spot to know when to make that turn. All right, when you're pulling a trailer, remember, it's heavier. It is longer, and you're going to have to take wider turns. How did I learn this lesson? Well, I learned it early out on the farm when I was used to driving another vehicle and took a corner a little too sharp. And fortunately, it wasn't as bad as this picture, but the corner went off the edge, and I got a stern talking to from my father about where I need to make my turns. And so I've got to plan ahead and give myself sufficient space to be able to make those wide turns. All right, just remember everything is exaggerated when we're pulling a trailer. So we've got to watch our speed. In general, we're going to reduce our speed fairly significantly when we're pulling a trailer just because of that exaggeration of everything else. Use your tow haul feature if your vehicle has one. There's a button that you can push. Sometimes you shift it in. Push that button because that will shift your transmission so it is gearing based on pulling a trailer. In some cases, it will actually downshift if you start going downhill and put a little bit of resistance back on that vehicle so you don't have to use as much on your brakes. And that's a really critical thing to remember as well. If you're going downhill, you need to gear down to use your transmission to slow your vehicle down. And so we're not putting all of that weight on your braking system because they can overheat and then fail. Trailers have trailer brakes in some cases that are electric brakes. I want to verify those. I'm doing my walk around. I want to check that and make sure those are functioning. Um, but I have to be smart about using those trailer brakes. Sometimes there will be a controller inside the vehicle, and I can have a manual control for that where I can apply more brakes, but realize that it's really easy to lock those up, and you can wear out your tires or damage the braking system if I apply those too hard. I also may have an adjustment on the gain on that, so it will bring the brakes in a little bit earlier or a little bit later, and so I want to practice on that. Avoid sudden stops and starts because of that exaggerated effect. Watch going over railroad tracks or through dips in the road because things ride very differently with a trailer on. All right. Pay attention to weather conditions. If I have high wind conditions, maybe that's not the day to pull the really high profile trailer around, or I need to be aware of the difference of pulling that. Um, and if I'm loaded, that's very different than being unloaded. Sometimes being empty with a high profile vehicle is the worst situation because it's light and it becomes a sail and those winds can tip us over. So bad day, maybe we consider going tomorrow. All right. Think about your following distance. We always talk about the 3 second plus rule. That includes trailers where we start at 5 seconds. Whatever trailer I'm pulling, minimum I start with 5 second following distance behind the vehicle in front of me. And then for every 10 feet of vehicle length that I have, I add an additional second to that. So you could easily be up to 10 seconds plus of following distance. So I want to calculate that ahead of time. Okay, I've got a really long trailer on, it's heavy. And so my following distance is going to be extended. So I've got plenty of room to apply the brakes and slow down before I get anywhere near somebody else. I don't want to be panicking with a trailer on because it's harder to stop. Okay. Backing up is probably one of the biggest challenges that people have with utilizing trailers. And so there's just a couple of rules we want to go around that, and we'll talk about specifically the operation of backing a trailer. Use a spotter if you have the opportunity. If there's a body there, let's use a spotter. Don't be afraid to ask for help because this may be have a lot of blind spots or be a blind side back where I have an area where I just physically can't see because of the direction and the configuration of where I'm going. Use a spotter. Make sure that you and the spotter are speaking the same language. Agree upon some hand signals, and there are standardized hand signals that are utilized throughout construction and around the industry. Make sure that you all know the same language. But here's one important rule: if the driver can't see the spotter, you need to stop and verify what's going on. All right, let's talk about backing a trailer. Let's not be this guy. Let's not be the guy out at the boat ramp that can't figure out how to get the trailer down there. So he gets out and picks it up as it's backing in because there's no way it's getting down the ramp any other way. Well, some people really get flustered when it comes to to backing a trailer, but it's really just to have a plan and think ahead. Give yourself plenty of space. Think of your angle of approach. Always start with your vehicle and trailer straight. If I start on an angle, that's really going to be hard to overcome in the long run. Scout it out first. Know where you're going. Look at any hazards that may be out there and get out and look, right? That's a key thing to avoiding these things. Basic principle of backing a trailer is turn the bottom of the steering wheel the direction you want your trailer to go. It's opposite in from normal backing. And so this is, if you're having a hard time visualizing, how do I make this trailer go where I want it to? Turn the bottom of the wheel the direction you want the trailer to go. Make small movements. If you're turning the wheel hand over hand, your trailer is going to make wide turns, and it's going to be all over the place, and you're probably not going to end up where you're going. Think about your pivot point. Where does it pivot? Well, it pivots at the hitch, but also you got to remember those axles. That's the real key point of where I want to initiate a turn, where I want to change things, or when those tires are in a certain position. Watch all sides of the vehicle. Use your mirrors. Turn your head, and use all of the tools that you have to be able to watch for those blind spots and ensure you're getting where you're going. So once again, this can be challenging, but just start slow. Make sure your vehicle is straight to start with, the vehicle and trailer, and make small movements, and be patient with this. Don't be afraid to try again. If things start getting out of alignment, pull forward, get everything straightened up, and do it again. Best place to practice is probably in an open parking lot with no other vehicles around. Go out and practice on those things. Don't practice at the boat dock with 20 other boats waiting for you to back that trailer in. That's where it gets frustrating, and unfortunately people are going to laugh, and we don't want that. All right, let's talk about just a couple of safety basics for trailers. When you're hooking those things up, use the jack that's provided with the trailer. Don't be lifting those up. That's some improper lifting technique, and we can put some real strain on our backs in doing that. No riders on trailers. That is an unsafe act by definition, so nobody rides on a trailer. And in addition to that, when you're getting in and out of, on or off of trailers, use 3 points of contact. Don't be jumping off of these trailers. Every year we see some really serious debilitating injuries that come from simple acts of getting on and off of trailers, in and out of trailers, and they don't have to happen if we'll do those simple rules there. 3 points of contact. Sometimes it may mean that we need to get a ladder to access certain parts of the trailer, and that's okay. Take the time to do it right. All right. Mike didn't think I could go longer than I did in the first one, but I did. Second one's always going to be longer than the first one.
It was impressive.
Sorry, Mike. Hey, if you've got any questions or comments, please type those into the chat box right now, and we'll answer those after my summary. Just let's plan ahead. Let's practice. Let's ensure that the whole system is appropriate for the load and the weight that we're trying to carry. Get our weight distributed correctly. 10% weight on your hitch, and if it doesn't feel right, stop and let's readjust things and make sure it works. Practice makes perfect, and at the end of the day, you're the driver. You're the person responsible. So let's take the time to do it right. Mike, do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions right now, folks. If you've got something, go ahead and scroll down to the bottom of that bot chat and give us your give us your questions you got for Jason here. Yeah, this is really, really good stuff, Jason. This is important. This is stuff we need to know of. And just like you said, practice. God, we got to practice with these things. Practice with the trailers. Practice what you're doing, and practice with different kinds of trailers. Right? If you're good with a single axle, maybe you need to practice with the double axle before you actually take the double axle out, because that single axle, it's a little squirrely. That double axle ain't going to be as responsive as that single axle.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the backup there. He's out in a beautiful part of Utah, so appreciate him sitting on the side of the road to ensure we got this video taken care of. Thanks, folks, for everything you do out there, and all of your efforts to stay safe. Let's make a commitment to do it right, do it safe, do it right every time. Go home safe every day. Thanks, folks. Go out and have a safe day.